by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
Friends of Waterfront Seattle presents Pier Sounds, an October concert series at Pier 62 on the downtown Seattle waterfront, featuring sensational regional bands and artists, including the Black Tones on October 2nd. These free, family-friendly concerts welcome everyone to come and enjoy live music and the sights and sounds of Seattle's waterfront. Pier 62 was home to one of the most iconic and popular music events in the city, Summer Nights on the Pier. Pier Sounds concert series forges this memory with new energy and music on a revitalized Pier 62 to reignite the sense of celebration and community in the place where it all began. Pier Sounds new concert series at Pier 62.
Visit peersounds.org for free tickets and more info.
Women Empowerment Talk Radio, your roadmap to business success. Tune in every Sunday at 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, providing resources and sharing motivational experiences from the everyday entrepreneur. Tune in Women Empowerment Talk Radio every Sunday, 3 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Yo, what's good? It's D-Money, and you should definitely check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Pacific, right on Rainier Avenue Radio.
With pint-sized Patron, P-Treasy the Don. Y'all be sure to clean your mirrors as we play brand new hip-hop and R&B from locals and worldwide.
It's ID Yourself, a.k.a. Malcolm Flex. Make sure you check out Fresh Juice every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time from 9 to 11 p.m.
And to get those exclusive interviews that we be doing.
Sipping a brand new fresh juice every single week.
Yeah, every Wednesday, 9 to 11, Rainier Avenue Radio. Yeah.
What is the Delta variant? It's a faster, more efficient version of the original virus that causes COVID-19. It's the same virus, it's just better at infecting people. Delta is far more contagious than its predecessors. It's spreading twice as quickly as the original strain, and people who are infected with it carry around much more virus. Getting vaccinated is the best defense we have against COVID-19, including against the Delta variant. Now check this out. The vaccine is free, safe, and effective. Time to protect yourself is now. Learn more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not shouting, "Badia" at city council meetings, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
You're listening to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Heartbeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color, we're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through Heartbeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio. I am your host, Cindi Bright. I am excited and kind of fired up tonight about our show because this show is about what you just heard that intro say. It is about equity. It is about access and opportunity for all people. Many of you know I ran for office in 2018 on the very platform of equity and education and acceleration. And I have a heart and passion for moving this issue forward. The question we all have to ask ourselves is Washington State ready? Are the Black students in our state ready for a global economy? Our ability to earn wealth, our ability to access wealth begins with the education system. The education system in Washington State sadly has become a political issue, and our Black families are caught in the middle of trying to progress our families and our kids to have education, and then their ability to be able to have earning power, not just a salary, but earning power so that we can start to rebuild and recreate wealth in our families. That's how we're going to start the show tonight. And we have 4 phenomenal guests that are joining us in this conversation this evening to talk about it. They are leaders in our community. They are all doing some very powerful work in our community. We're going to hear some creative things that are happening. We're going to get to hear from corporate America about a racial equity initiative and work that corporate America has taken on. So let's begin this conversation tonight so that we can all get into how we are going to actually progress Black students, Black people in our state. Welcoming my first guest in, I'm going to introduce in Shomari Jones. Shomari Jones, by title, is the Director of Equity and Engagement for the Bellevue School District. We know there's a lot going on there. Shomari, welcome to Heartbeat Radio this evening. I don't think we can hear you. I think your mic is muted. There we are. I can't hear you, so let Daniel, I'll see if you can handle that. I will introduce in our next person. I'm giddy to have Steve Smith. He is the Executive Director for Black Education Strategy Roundtable. Steve, welcome to Heartbeat Radio this evening.
Good evening. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
All right. Thirdly, let's introduce in Jonathan Johnson. He is the founder and CEO of the Rooted School. It is a charter school out of Vancouver doing some exciting things. Jonathan, welcome to Heartbeat Radio this evening.
Cindi, thank you for having me, and good to see you, Steve and Shomari again.
And last but not least, we have Craig Dawson. He is the president of Retail Lockbox, and he is also the chair of the Washington Roundtable here in Washington State. Craig, welcome to Heartbeat Radio this evening.
Cindi, hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and excited to talk about Black education and educating our Black kids.
Yes, this is the first time for all of you to know I have never had a panel of 4 Black men on with me. So this is the first time that I actually have this kind of a panel. I'm excited to have you guys all on because this conversation must be had, and to our listeners and our audience, it's a necessity that we start to progress this, not at the snail's pace that it has been going, but in a way that we can start accelerating this. Shomari, have you fixed your mic? Because I actually wanted to start with you this evening.
Check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Check.
Right.
You're on. Yes. I wanted to, I thought maybe you could start off by talking to us about, not necessarily about what's going on in the Bellevue School District, although we all know there's a lot, but what is your role there? And then what would you like to tell us about your perspectives now that you are working in the K-12 system about Black kids, and are they ready? And, what's your perspective about what's going on with Black kids in the state of Washington?
Okay, sorry for the disruption with the microphone earlier. What I was going to say is thank you for having me. I'm excited to be engaged in this conversation, and thank you, Cindi Bright, for tackling such an important convo. I'm the Director of Equity and Strategic Engagement in Bellevue. A major part of my role, and I coin myself in quotations as a disruptor. My job is to identify areas of opportunities for us as an organization to grow and eliminate barriers, eliminate hate, eliminate bias, eliminate disruption to the normal engagement of students in their daily grind as they seek to ingest the information that they've been given by their educators, albeit the information not necessarily always aligned to their cultural history or the narrative that is most connected to who they are as an individual. From the landscape that I see, there's just such a need for us to really transform the education system in ways that really meet the needs of all the students. And we're having such a tough time with identifying how to serve all the students when we historically and in our present day system have really rooted ourselves in the normalcy of how education was originated, during the time of Industrial Revolution and the time of manufacturing, and we still sit in seats that way, we still educate in that way, and we still ensure that the students that we're in front of are getting an education, but it's not necessarily an education that is beneficial to them culturally as they seek to consistently find their ways and their fit into a system that wasn't built for them.
What progress, if any, has been made on decolonizing education for Black kids?
Little. I think that the decolonization efforts are valor, and they're going on all over the country, all over the region. It's really difficult to institute some of these decolonization strategies for the feedback and the pushback that comes from our community, who does not believe that what we're seeking to decolonize is information that is rooted in truth. And so when we, as an organization, when we have constituency, which make up the dominant contingents for how we move forward, we seek the information that we'd like to hear from our community and use that information to help to drive how and who we are as an organization. When that narrative does not slight towards those who are historically marginalized, then we don't make the necessary shifts, because we're pushing up against a system that does not want to change, does not want to budge.
We'll get deeper into that. Jonathan, I want to bring you in at this point, because you are actually the founder of the Rooted School, which is a charter school up in Vancouver. Talk to us first off about your finding of that school. Talk to us about what it is, why you decided to do this, and then what the work and the programs and the things that you're doing up there, because it kind of gets at some of the things that Shomari is talking about.
Yeah, no, Cindi, thanks again for having me. And again, it's great to see Steve and Shomari. I remember talking with y'all in Seattle and Tacoma area. Craig, great to meet you. So Jonathan, I started a nonprofit in 2014 called Rooted School Foundation. And in short, we started to ask one question: how can public schools restore the American dream, especially for students in the global majority? And I believe that unless we do something differently now, it will take those in the global majority more than 2 centuries to obtain the same amount of wealth as the average white family in this country. And this doesn't have to be the case. And I've learned that through the work we've done with our first school in Rooted New Orleans. More than half of that school's graduates are working in high growth, high wage jobs or attending 4-year colleges with significant scholarships. Our students entering jobs have no debt and are able to save, invest, and generate wealth much earlier than their college-going peers. And we're excited at the chance to offer these opportunities in Washington with the launch of Rooted School Vancouver come fall of 2022.
That is so awesome. Steve Smith, let's bring you in, because you do some work in post-secondary education, and I'd love to hear what the work of the the Black Strategy Education Roundtable is doing, and then update our community about, I don't know if you have initiatives going on or just some of the things that you want our community to know.
Again, good evening and hello to everyone, and to I've had the pleasure of working directly with Shomari and conversating with Jonathan, and although I haven't met Craig, I do a lot of work with the Washington Roundtable and some of the folks there. And so education is an important piece. And the Black Education Strategy Roundtable, we are looking at how do we create positive outcomes for Black students through policy, through systemic change. We know that systems have been set up in education that do not serve Black and brown students, and that they are more likely to push kids out. And so we're trying to figure out how can we do this better. And one of the things that we were involved with in the past was charter schools. And so we're glad to see Jonathan having taken on that effort to create a charter school, which is a high lift. And there were challenges against that. And we were in the position of, as an organization, to say, how do we help create options for parents? Choice is a big issue, and a lot of parents feel like they don't have choice, especially from low-income and Black families, that there's no choice for them and where their kids go to school. And so we believe that that's a wonderful option, and charter schools are one of those things that provide that. So it's a public school that allow us to do that. Also, we're working with legislators and with state agencies such as OSPI and the State Board of Education as they form policies and how do those efforts go forward. We've been engaged with the State Board of Education as it looks at graduation requirements, as we look at the components of what are the courses that really make sense for students going forward. And we're about a rigorous high school diploma. We want to make sure that the education that they possibly can, because we have way too many Black students who graduate from high school. Over the years, our graduation numbers have been going up, and that is a positive trend. But too many of our students are not prepared for post-secondary or vocational, and so that leaves them in a hole. That leaves us as a whole, as a society in a whole. So we're trying to make sure that we're preparing folks to make the good leap into post-secondary, into work when they graduate from high school.
Why is it so controversial to Black families are choosing or needing choice for their kids? And don't even get me, even though I will get to a point in the show where I talk about the political engine that is blocking progress for Black kids in the state. But why is it so controversial to have charter schools for Black kids when white families have wealth and can take their kids and put their kids into systems to educate their kids? But when we want the same options to help our kids, to your point, they're not prepared. We're going to have Craig talk to what the workforce is actually challenged with. Why is that so controversial from your perspective?
It's an interesting space. There's a lot of things. I don't know. Craig, do you want to answer into that as well?
Oh, I think that question was for you, but
okay. Well, just one of the pieces is that there's society is used to folks, especially if you're poor, if you're a person of color. Society is controlling us and saying, here's what works for you and here's what you need. And we're saying that we should have options to other people do. One example is that if you went to the Fauntleroy Ferry in West Seattle on a school morning, there were a number of kids, white kids from Seattle, who take the ferry over to
Steve, you're breaking up pretty bad, so we're losing. I don't know if I'm the only one who can't hear you well.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. Let me ask another question because you're breaking up a little bit. I'm going to take a question from, I'm looking at the comment feed. We have a lot of comments coming in. So there's a question that came in that says, it's directed to Shomari. Were kids of color were quote unquote brought in to help win football championships? If so, is there still an objectification of kids of color to win for the benefit of the white privileged?
Some years ago, we had some issues with Bellevue High School football that was brought to the attention of our entire region, and there were alleged payments that were going to students and families for the students who are highly proficient athletes to come to BSD to serve on the teams and help to win the championships. I'm not certain of the final settlement. There was a report. There were some suits that happened.
I can actually add to that.
Yeah.
Let me add to that while you're talking.
Ma'am.
There's
Please.
Actually a book. I actually just read it, and I'll tell you why I just read it. The book is called Does the Truth Really Matter? And it's the second version. There's three, he's working on the third one, and it's a powerful read because it's written by one of the actual football coaches. And everything that I read in that book is exactly what Black people have to constantly deal with in society, which is accusations that are not rooted in anything except white folks trying to take down the people that are actually trying to promote Black children. And Coach Butch was the coach involved in that. It's a great read. You just have to read it because I can't do it justice, but I actually bought it and sent it to my son. And I actually think people listening to this should read this book because you'll get a deeper understanding of this ecosystem that we are talking about today. It is an ecosystem to destroy Black children and Black lives.
Yeah, let me expand just a little bit, Cindi.
Go ahead.
I don't want to speak to what happened to the students and the process that happened in order to ensure that there were these young men on this team. But what I will say is that what a horrible detriment to our Black community to put Black students on Front Street as to what was alleged again to be an inappropriate reason for them to be in place and spaces where they were thriving in, maybe even beyond. And what that did for many families really tore them down and really diminished or demeaned who they were sometimes as parents, but also who they were as students. And we don't do that to kids. We're not supposed to do that to children. You know, they should be free from the tyranny of oppression that our society dumps on we as a culture and as people. But unfortunately, and especially in this particular incident, they were not.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a caller who's called in. I'm going to bring them in. Amani Harris, part of a 1-2-3 initiative, and has something that they want to either say or add to this conversation. Can we bring them on, please?
Yeah, hi, this is Amani. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for calling in. Welcome to Heartbeat.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the call. I had to really call in because I got excited to hear some of the people that I know here on your show. So thank you for having me on, Craig and Shomari. This is Amani Harris from the Breakfast Group.
Hey, Amani.
And I just wanted to throw one key word in about everything that you're talking about in regards to tonight's topic. The one thing I think is really important for us all now is to get young people to build very specific skills right now. And so we created something that we want to partner with people on. It's called the 1-2-3 initiative. Step one is to help young people as early as 6th grade identify 3 to 5 careers. Step two is for them to get in touch with or bring out professionals to hear about those specific fields, career professionals, so specifically women and career speakers of color. And then step three is to get them involved in specific skill building skills right now. And so there are programs right now out there that students can enroll in as early as kindergarten or 6th grade that will help them have skills in things like cloud computing. For example, Amazon has a program called AWS Educate. It's free. You go through that program, you can work in cloud computing at Amazon when you're done, and you don't actually have to go to college. So we're trying to work together with lots of partners to figure out how we can rally the community and get our young Black students to become very, very talented, and in fact, to become undeniably talented. So they have the skills to be what employers are looking for.
Awesome. Amani, thank you for calling and sharing that information with our community. I know that our listeners appreciate this. I know there are several different organizations that are working to try to help fill this gap also. It's a good entry point for Craig Dawson to come in because as Craig, you are on the forefront with corporate America trying to deal with this issue. Would you like to comment to our community about both the racial racial equity initiative that is underway, and would you like to add some, pardon the pun, but some color to the conversation here?
Absolutely. So thanks, Cindi. Yeah, I'm the current chair of the Washington Roundtable and the president of Retail Lockbox. The Washington Roundtable is a group of the 50 largest CEOs in the state. I am a small business, but am the chair of that group. And we have an initiative called Washington Employers for Racial Equity. Washington Employers for Racial Equity was really born out of the George Floyd killing, and it's really designed to have an impact on Black Washingtonians. So for the first time in probably history, American CEOs are focused on equity for Black Washingtonians. And so there's been a commitment by 59 firms who signed on to the WEIR initiative, and those commitments are individual within the organizations, but basically around hiring Black people, around buying from Black businesses, around diversifying their boards and their C-suites, and then providing educational opportunities for Black kids. And the Washington Roundtable itself has an initiative of 70% credential attainment by the age of 26 by all Washingtonians by 2030.
Craig, let me ask you a question about that work, and let me ask you a question about it. So that initiative did, as you just said, was born out of when the murder of George Floyd. And I guess, I think I was a former corporate HR executive, and so I worked in several of these organizations, and for a couple of the folks that sit on that board. Historically, I'll just say diversity initiatives have been run in corporate America more as programs, and or the focus has been on hiring. And those two areas have never, in my career, and I'm maybe one of the oldest ones on the call here today, I guess my question is, what has progressed since the declaration of racial equity by corporate America? What has actually progressed? And what accountability is corporate America holding in this space to help move this issue around education for Black kids, diversity progress? Where are they with this?
Sure. So the WEIR itself, Washington Employers for Racial Equity, was born on December 1st last year. So we're about 9 months old. That organization, we have been funded, and there's an executive director, Philip Jacobs is the executive director running that program. Each of the organizations themselves, each of the businesses have their own initiatives that they're running together, trying to learn from one another. And then really it's about results. What I've been talking to the CEOs about is it's great to have like a roster of businesses. It's great to have a bench, but it's really about the transaction. We have to get to the point where we're actually buying from Black firms, we're actually hiring Black people, so that transaction level. There's been a lot of times where we have these commitments, but these commitments is very difficult. How does that Black firm actually do work with Microsoft or Boeing? How do you get that contract? And so that's really what we're working on today. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but it's going to be a long-term effort. The WEIR initiative longitudinally is for 5 years. And it's right now the commitment is $2 billion. And I think people hear $2 billion and like, oh, we're going to run out and they're going to give us money. Really, it's around what those individual corporations are doing and what they've committed themselves to doing. And that does include hiring. It does include making a workplace better for Black people that are working at that workplace. It does include buying from Black firms. It does include finding ways to educate our Black kids. And each one of the firms is doing that differently. So we've got 59 firms that have made those commitments. And WEIR actually is the point where we're going to aggregate all the information about the results. And today, if you look at Washington business, 0.5% of all the businesses in the state of Washington are Black, and 0.2% of all the revenue go to Black businesses. So $660 billion is our GDP in the state of Washington, and that means that only 1.2 billion roughly are going to Black businesses today. We need to get that to 5%. That's roughly the population. So that would be about $22 billion. So when we really have our goals around growing Black business, it's getting them to 5%, getting us to 5%, and getting that number to about $22 billion a year. That solves a lot of the ills that we're talking about on this call about how do we educate our kids, how do we keep them out of jail, how do we take care of our family from a healthcare perspective, how do we have generational wealth that we can move to the next generation.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I've got just two quick follow-up questions. One is, in corporate America's effort to progress this, are they also dealing with the racists in the organization? Because many of us know that the lack of progress is in direct correlation to corporate America being full of racist people who have power and control over people. So I see you laughing. That's my feisty side. And then one of our listeners asked a question, and she said, "Is the public welcome to sit in the meetings of your organization?" So
the first question is, I think we have to root out those folks in the organization. There are a lot of barriers for Black people to get the job, and there are a lot of barriers for Black companies to get the work. And so over the last 40 or 50 years, we've not been able to get through those barriers. I have a unique position sitting where I'm sitting both as a business owner on the roundtable and really helping to drive this equity for Black Washingtonians. 2 years ago, you would never have gotten any CEOs to say, hey, we think Black people are not being represented or there's an equity issue. We have their ear today. And the goal the work that we're doing is at the CEO level, but then driving it down to that transactional level. So at the level of hiring, so in the HR department, at the level of procurement, either in the department or at the buyer level. And so when those HR folks say, hey, we can't hire this person because they don't have the right degree, or we can't buy from them because, they don't have the right insurance, that's where we're trying to step in. We are stepping in, and we're getting back with the CEO and saying, hey, this is what we're hearing. You're hiring other people with the same deficiency or the same credentials. You're buying from other businesses that have the same issue or the lack of insurance. We need to make sure that this contract goes through. We make sure that you're hiring that person. So it's not, I don't think, explicit, but we have to get around those people, and we have to call them out. We have to show them the ones in the organization that are stopping the work from going forward. And the meetings of the roundtable, the second question, the meetings of the roundtable it's a private group. It's not an open meeting to the public. This is really a business initiative. The goal is, what can Washington businesses do to drive racial equity for Black Washingtonians? Yes. And it's just, we want to just do 2 or 3 things, right? We want to buy from Black business. We want to hire Black people. We want to create an environment within the workplace that's hospitable, so we can keep Black people when we get them in the door.
Yes, thank you for that explanation, Craig. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back after the break and pick back up on the education piece. So we'll be right back.
Black businesses, assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not translating the lyrics of Boogie Oogie Oogie for bored Europeans, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Friends of Waterfront Seattle presents Pier Sounds, an October concert series at Pier 62 on the downtown Seattle waterfront, featuring sensational regional bands and artists, including Vaughn Lewis and Friends, on October 9th. These free, family-friendly concerts welcome everyone to come and enjoy live music and the sights and sounds of Seattle's waterfront. Pier 62 was home to one of the most iconic and popular music events in the city, Summer Nights on the Pier. Pier Sounds concert series forges this memory with new energy and music on a revitalized Pier 62 to reignite the sense of celebration and community in the place where it all began. Pier Sounds new concert series at Pier 62.
Visit puresounds.org for free tickets and more info.
This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. I'm also the owner of Seattle Love Broker, a relationship consulting and matchmaking company. Tune in every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. to listen to intriguing, informative, and entertaining guests share stories of their past and vision for the future of our community.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at rainierAvenueRadio.world.
Set up the Saks, our favorite Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.
Welcome back to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Joining me this evening are 4 guests. You can go ahead and bring them all in. We have Shomari Jones from the Bellevue School District, Steve Smith from Black Education Strategy Roundtable, Jonathan Johnson from the Root at School, and Craig Dawson from Retail Lockbox and the chair of the Washington Roundtable. And we just left off with Craig, and there's a lot of comments coming in, a lot of questions. I want to pick back up, Jonathan, I want to come to you because I got a question that came to me and said, they asked it different than I'm going to ask it, but can you describe to our audience why you're asking why charter school over public school, and they're not understanding charter schools are public schools, but can you explain why our taxpayers or why people should be interested or engaged in the charter school concept for Black students?
Yeah, no, thanks, Cindi, for the question, and the listener for the question. I can't speak to why all charter schools are needed. I can speak to my experience starting one and having the opportunity to start one in Vancouver. And so to give you an example of why I believe in the potential of schools, I'll just give a small illustration of what we see playing out in Vancouver. And so it's in Southwest Washington, we're projecting around 1,700 annual openings in IT, healthcare, manufacturing kinds of fields over the next 5 years. However, there's a shortage of homegrown talent to meet this workforce need. Meanwhile, there's a gap that exists, and we've been talking about it most of the evening, between the educational and career opportunities provided to white students compared to students in the global majority and those with disabilities in order to meet that growing workforce need. This has been longstanding and with little movement in a positive direction. Insert a model like a Rooted and perhaps a 1-2-3 initiative. The opportunity there is we can directly engage companies like the ones that exist at the Washington Roundtable to understand, one, what are the industry-based credentials that we should be exposing students to as early as high school or much earlier. Offer co-op opportunities, kind of similar to what the University of Waterloo has successfully done, where students are working anywhere between 4 weeks to 4 months at a company. And then, frankly, just hire the high school graduates. And we've seen this be true with our school in New Orleans, where students are getting jobs paying roughly $32,000 as 17 and 18-year-olds, furthermore, doubling their family wages. And if that's true in New Orleans, we know it can be true in places like Vancouver, Washington.
Mm-hmm. Can I insert a couple of other issues that you guys may agree with? I've had candidates for school boards on my show regularly, and one of the consistent themes that come out of particularly Black women who are running for school boards in elementary schools is that the public school system is the beginning point of the prison pipeline for Black kids. And so that issue is definitely there. And so the discipline rates for Black students over the same issues as white students is completely different in the public school system. And so many parents are choosing to put their kids in the charter schools to not have them end up in prison. So that's number one. And number two, isn't the teacher issue? Somebody else asked that question earlier that I didn't get to, but recruiting and BIPOC teachers in the public school system is having a harder time with that. Steve, do you have a perspective about that?
Yeah, Cindi, could you state your last question again about the
prison?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some candidates on that run for school board, and they are saying that like the student resource officers, and they actually have police officers in elementary schools. And so Black children are being disproportionately disciplined for the same issues that white students do, but the discipline is far more severe. And so Black families we know the gig with police officers. And so they're choosing to pull their kids out of those school systems and put them into charter schools to avoid having to deal with that trap. Do you have perspective on that? And Shomari might also have some perspective. Yeah.
Charter schools in our state, actually 34% of teachers in charter schools are black, are teachers of color, and compared to 12% in our public schools. So there are a lot more teachers of color in our charter schools. Our charter schools are also, the law defines that our charter schools must serve students who have been underserved by our traditional schools. And so there's population targets that are there, although it's open to everyone. We need to make sure that we're serving students who have been underserved by our traditional schools. And so when you put these things together, our charter schools are working very hard to make sure that we're providing a strong education. And there's a lot of research that shows that if a Black student has at least one Black teacher in their K-12 experience, they're much more likely to graduate from high school and go on to college. And so the charter schools are really filling in that hole.
Awesome. Shomari, did you have perspective about that as well?
Yeah, I always, most definitely. Going back to your earlier statement, this SRO issue, a lot of folks do not understand even where policing originated and how we're now policing young Black boys and young Latino boys dominantly in our school building spaces. We need to find pathways to exit. The idea of policing from an education space is inappropriate. I don't think it's appropriate unless there's a direct imminent threat for someone to bring guns into a building space, which for many cause direct implications and impact on their ability to focus on their education attainment. And so I'm big on that. As far as our teacher accessing and retention is concerned, I sat on this panel a while ago in Austin with a gentleman who did a role similar to mine in Broward County down in Florida. And he really broke this down about how in the Black community across the country, the number one profession that many of our Black educated go into is education. But in that, we only make up approximately 1% across the nation of teachers. And so imagine the 1% of teachers seeking to go into a career field to truly help and support and provide access to folks who looked like them and had potentially experiences not too dissimilar from the ones that they themselves had when they were in K-12 experiences. And I think about a place like the place where I work in Bellevue, where our Black student population is no more than 3% on any given time. And what is going to really inspire someone who's coming out of a circumstance where they have been surrounded by folks who affirmed them to come to a place like ours in service of the very few individuals or students that we have here. So a lot of our Black teachers across the country are flocking to places where they know they can make the greatest impact. And I just really want to say that, to those who are aspiring or presently in the field of education, we really need you here also. This is a place that unfortunately our students have the dominant culture perspective around most things, and don't see themselves as potentially accessing those successes because sometimes they don't see themselves in those roles. And so employment for our educators is tough, and retention is tougher because we treat a lot of our staff like we treat our students, which is not affirming to the history and the culture that they're bringing to the table.
And so you're making the case. It's why Black America is starting to do its own thing in many regards, because the system as it exists right now is intentionally designed to harm the Black students. And so us continuing, I don't know a whole lot about the funding of it. I do know that charter schools don't get public funding dollars, they don't get levy dollars. And we have elected officials who are in fact have their heels dug in the ground and refuse to do anything to progress this as a choice and a solution for our kids. And so I appreciate that you're explaining at detail people who don't have a good understanding of why people are making this choice. And I want to talk about solutions. What do you think we should be doing next? Like Are these schools growing? I know we have, let's see, I have a comment here. I heard someone say ducks pick ducks concerning more Black teachers not being hired. I'm not sure what that meant. But here we are at an inflection point. We have elections coming up next year. Our community needs to be paying attention to the people who are chairing these education councils and forums, and because doing the same thing in the same system is going to garner the same results. Am I off base with that? Or can somebody help educate me on what should we be doing different now? What should we be doing different now? Who would like to take that question?
Yeah, I'll start, Cindi. Going back to Craig's earlier point, it is possible not only to have 70% industry-based credential attainment by the time, Craig, I think you said they're 30?
Age 26.
26, got it.
Right.
Because we've seen it be true for students every year. 70% of our students earn an industry-based credential in an IT-related field every year as a high school. And I believe that that's not an anomaly for one school. That can exist for many. And so I think the very first thing that could change is schools more aggressively aligning what they do on a daily basis, in a programmatic basis, to the credentials and needs of industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shomari, I saw you. Was that Craig?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I just want to say, we've moved away. We've moved towards everyone getting a college education, a college degree, and that's great for some kids. But there are other avenues for wealth creation in America, and those include great jobs that are in the construction industry, longshoremen. The credentials that we're talking about can be a 2-year or 4-year degree, technical degree, but those jobs that I'm talking about, those pay 6 figures. And so I think we have told all of our kids, hey, go get a STEM education, which I think is important. There's a lot of money to be made with technical jobs, but there's also a shortage of workers for these construction jobs, these other types of jobs where these credentials are available. And I think we got to sort of make sure that the kids, as they come through, what is their path? And then we have to help them along that path. If they need an apprenticeship in working for Puget Sound Energy because they're going to be a poleman, we need to make sure that kid gets that job and gets the training to do that, because they can make $100,000 doing that job or more.
So you open up an interesting conversation that I don't think we're going to have time to dive in tonight, but I want to make a couple of comments about that because one of the things, so I don't disagree, there are jobs there for people. Wealth is not built on $100,000 here in the Seattle area. And so you can't accumulate wealth by a job. Wealth is being accumulated through access to housing, so real estate, equity inside of companies where the big bucks are being paid. That's a whole conversation we can have a different day if you're willing to come back and entertain it. There's just a lot of
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to come back to another question that I just received.
But wealth does start with having a great job and having enough money to put away and being able to have get a down payment to buy that home. So
it does. You're correct on that. Somebody asked me the question, because of the charter school issue and the fact that our state doesn't put any dollars into Black kids' charter schools, which is so disappointing constantly. But they say that property taxes, many people of color live in rentals and their landlords don't want to pay more taxes to support Black kids. So how do you think we solve that problem of helping to get more equitable funding into alternatives for Black families into other schools?
Well, I'll jump on that a little bit. With the McCleary decision that was impacting teacher funding for schools, that said the state was not for funding basic education. there was some work to be done to try to give equity around school funding. So levies and property taxes are a lot of where schools get additional money to help support schools, and you're correct. So there are those districts and those areas that have high property tax values, and they can raise money up and they can get a lot. And so we've been working to try to come up with different funding formulas to mitigate for those differences. And it's a battle. It's a battle, and there's still work to be done on that. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. And the state needs to make sure that they're looking at how do we fund things, because money is supposed to follow students. And actually, one of the things that we keep thinking about and how do we do is how do we help parents have more control over the money that goes to their students? Because every student is paid $13,000 to $15,000, I think, hit for by the state that goes to the school, and we don't have any say over how that money is spent. What would happen if we were able to help control where some of that money went? I think we'd see a different type of response from education.
Who's controlling where it goes?
There's a lot of mandates. So there's some things that are required for some funding. So the state will say, here's this bucket, it goes here, and but your school district is the one that gets to make the decision. And those budgets can get confusing. And I just tell people, when you go to your school board and they're working on their budget, what are your priorities for our students? And here's where our students are not achieving. And how does your budget help our students achieve? How are you making up a difference? And that's the question. And it's not where does all the money go? It's what is it being done? What are we trying to achieve with this? And how are we trying to make a difference and solve these gaps that we have?
Well, unfortunately, just about the McCleary, unfortunately, the McCleary ruling didn't have any accountability associated with it. So there was dollars saying, hey, we're not providing for the basic level of education. So all, billions of dollars were pushed forward through McCleary. The money is really being controlled by the teachers unions, and most of that money has gone to the teachers. So, what we were talking about at the roundtable was really accountability. If we're going to give these additional dollars, let's make sure they get to the kids, and let's make sure these kids are achieving at a specific level. And so there was no accountability associated with that. If you look at, you're saying it went to the school district just passed it on to the teachers in the form of higher wages. And there was no accountability. That teacher might make more, but their kids aren't doing better. They're not graduating more kids. We still have the educational gap between Black kids and white kids. So that was not closed, even though we poured more money into the system.
And so when you net that out, because we have very little BIPOC teachers in the school system, the white teachers all got a raise and the Black kids are still falling behind in graduation rates. Thank you for clearing that up. We have a question. Does anybody have perspective? Who are the elected officials helping progress equity, and which electeds are obstacles?
Well, can I just jump in again? I think it just goes back to the teachers unions. And I know it's a touchy subject, but the teachers unions today and over the last 30 or 40 years have hired their people to run the school boards and hired the representatives both at the city level and at the state level. And those folks are making sure the dollars flow back again to the teachers. So I don't know that there's any elected officials that put kids first. We're more worried about the adults in the system than we are about the kids. And that's really what has to change. There has to be accountability for raising the achievement of our Black kids. And we need to get to an equity level.
Thank you for that, Craig. I want to re-emphasize what you just said about where the dollars are flowing. I do know that we do have elected officials. I've had them on my show. I've had elected officials who are in this space who make comments about Black students, about their inability to think deep. There are elected officials who unions control, and the control of them is what is deciding, like what you said, where those dollars go. And that's an important question. Thank you, Christy, for asking it, because elections are coming up next year for the state legislature, and we need to be, as a community, need to be paying attention to that. There are elected people that we must start to unseat. And we've got to get people in the system who are going to actually help make those dollars flow. No one is against teachers. None of us are against teachers.
Right.
What we are against is the inequity in teachers and the inequity in Black student education. And that system is just infiltrated with career politicians, let's just call it for what it is, who stay in power and who control where those dollars flow. And that's why this conversation is so important for our community, because we got to do something different. I think all of you would agree with that it's not working for Black people. And I certainly don't want to see us go through another election cycle and have the same people making the decisions that are harming our families, and our families are caught in the middle of this. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Why do you guys think that education is a political issue? Like, how do we, or maybe we shouldn't even talk about, I don't know. It's so nasty, it's so nasty to even dive into, because it's perceived a certain way. And I'm going to say these words, y'all can agree or not, but we all know that when white people's power is threatened, they will stop at nothing to take away from the Black community. And that is, in fact, when you talk about money flowing to the teachers and the unions, that is exactly what is happening, because Black teachers are not profiting off of it, and Black students are not either.
Politically speaking, Cindi, education also is a high leverage point for anyone who's running for a position. If you can make claim that you're going to serve someone's students, who are oftentimes like the impetus for why I breathe and go to work every single day. If you're going to make claim that you have a platform for which you can transform the experience of your children, then you are more electable. Right. The challenge that we face, and I saw a question in the comments about holding folks accountable. The challenge that we face is we don't continue to press upon some of our elected officials beyond the ballot. We hire them or elect them for what they said that they're going to do, and then we lay low and let off of holding them accountable for what they need to do in service of following through with their platform. And to someone's point a little bit earlier, what do we need to do? We need to mobilize. We I haven't been in this area for my entire life, but for a pretty substantial amount of time. And I'm actually positively surprised about how Seattle mobilizes around many issues that are of detriment to our global community. But when it comes to this one, we have a challenge with mobilizing and staying steady in those mobilized efforts so that we can ensure that our students are taken care of well.
Yeah, any time that you have huge dollars that you're talking about, it's going to become a political issue, because politics is all about taking dollars from one area and giving it to another. It's all about that resource. So when you have huge dollars like this, and the teachers union understands that, and again, we're focused on the adults in the buildings versus the achievement of the kids. And we've got more than enough money in the state. There's no reason, we talk about the different taxing, but there's more than enough money. That in the last quarter, the state brought in an extra $1 billion. So it's not about how much money, it's about how that money is getting used, and whether we're going to hold the teachers accountable, the teachers union accountable, your elected officials. And like I think Shomari said, we need to make a difference. We just hired the chief executive of the country and the president. Black people hired him. We need to hire those same kind of people in Washington.
Yep.
Right. We need to make a difference by going out and voting, and vote out these folks that aren't doing the job as it relates to educating our kids, and vote in the ones that will do.
1,000%. Look, we are just about at time for the show. I told you guys that this was going to go fast. It is a heavy, interesting topic. Our audience is saying it's an important topic. Both Black and white people aren't aware how important it is to hold officials accountable. Let's also say to not elect them or to unseat them, not just hold them accountable, take them out. This is a strategy we've got to adopt, because they're never going to change when they have these. Once they get in, these people stay in these seats for careers. We all know that. Anyhow, look, let me just take a minute and say, Shomari, Steve, Jonathan, and Craig, thank you all for taking an hour out of your evening tonight to talk to our community. We had a lot of engagement on this tonight, which shows you the interest that people have in this topic. Black people are tired of being marginalized and not having access, and we are tired of electing people into office that are not having our interest at heart. So thank you to each one of you tonight. Thank you to our audience for joining this conversation tonight and being engaged. We are going to have another part to this series. It's coming up in December. We will continue because that will be the timing of when legislative session is getting ready to be prepared. And so we're going to have to hit some things that we need to make sure our legislators are paying attention to. Thank you guys all for joining tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you to our audience, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, gents. Congrats, Jonathan, man. Good job.
Good job. Good.
Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yo.